Hey everyone! Welcome to Update X24H, your go-to channel for the latest news, hottest dramas, breaking stories, and all the buzz from the world of entertainment. We're here to keep you updated, entertained, and always in the loop. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing family, because here at Update X24H, we bring you the news that matters, the drama you love, and the stories you can't miss. Thanks for being part of our community. Let's stay connected, stay updated, and keep the good vibes rolling. Have you ever witnessed faith tremble before truth? Last night, in a quiet chapel in northern England, a pastor claimed he heard the voice of Menglong, the Chinese actor whose mysterious death still echoes through millions of hearts. Moments later, the crucifix above him cracked apart. Was it a miracle, a warning, or something that humanity has refused to see for too long? Tonight, we bring you a story not of fear, but of awakening. Stay with us. This you'll never forget. Pastor Jonathan Keller had never known fear in the traditional sense. For more than 40 years, his faith had been a steady flame through seasons of doubt, sorrow, and quiet triumph. Yet that night, as the church clock marked the passage of midnight, something ancient stirred within him, a trembling that felt less like fear and more like recognition. The call from his mother still echoed in his mind. She was 74, fragile but lucid, a woman whose intuition often brushed the edges of the unseen. Her voice, shaken yet resolute, had whispered through the receiver. "He says his name is Menglong. He's cold. He says no one believes him." Jonathan wanted to dismiss it as another restless dream, the kind that haunts the elderly when silence grows too loud. But something in her tone, the pause between her breaths, unsettled him. His mother had always been sensitive to what others ignored. As a child, he had seen her stop mid-sentence, eyes unfocused, as if listening to something beyond the veil of sound. She used to say that when a soul departs unjustly, it leaves behind a ripple that can't be silenced until it is heard. That night, he found himself preparing the chapel with trembling hands. The great stone nave of St. Michael's seemed to breathe with him. He lit 3 candles on the altar, one for light, one for truth, and one for mercy. The scent of wax mingled with the faint perfume of old wood and rain seeping through the glass. His mother sat quietly in the front pew, her shawl drawn tight, her eyes wide and distant. As Jonathan opened the Bible, a gust swept through the room though every door was closed. The flames shivered. He whispered a prayer, not out of ritual but out of instinct, an invocation not for protection, but for understanding. Then from somewhere between silence and air, a voice emerged. It was neither loud nor ghostly but delicate, as if carried by the breath of time itself. "I am Menglong," it said, the syllables drawn out with sorrow so palpable that Jonathan's chest tightened. "I didn't want to die." The sound was not of the living, yet it was filled with life. It trembled with yearning, confusion, and pain, not the howling terror of the dead, but the quiet desperation of someone who had been forgotten by the living. Jonathan felt his faith fracture and expand all at once. His mother closed her eyes, tears sliding down her cheeks. He wanted to speak but found no words. For the first time in decades, his prayer was not a recitation but a question. How could faith survive if truth itself was left unspoken? The candles burned lower, and the air thickened until it felt almost sacred. And in that silence Jonathan understood. He was not standing before a ghost, but before a story that refused to end. The voice that filled the chapel was no longer faint. It grew steadier, shaped by a grief that seemed to come from the bones of the earth itself. Jonathan felt the words pierce him as though the air around him had become alive with memory. "They told me my pain was beautiful," you whispered, his tone neither angry nor pleading, but filled with a weary resignation that chilled the soul. "They said art must demand sacrifice. They said I was chosen, that my suffering would make me immortal." The candles flickered violently, their light stretching thin across the marble floor, as if recoiling from the truth that had been spoken aloud. Jonathan's throat tightened. He wanted to reject what he heard, to remind the spirit that cruelty could not create beauty, that God would never ask for torment in his name. Yet he knew that this voice spoke not only for itself but for countless others who had been broken and remade by hands that claimed to serve creation. The sound of rain against the stained glass turned rhythmic, like a heartbeat, a pulse of sorrow echoing through the empty chapel. Then came something new. the revelation that turned fear into horror. They called it the Gallery of Rebirth, you continued, each word trembling under the weight of memory. A place where they transformed voices into music. Every cry, every breath, every tear. They recorded it, remixed it, and displayed it as beauty. The world applauded. They saw art. I saw a grave. His voice cracked on the last word, and Jonathan's hands shook so violently that the Bible slipped from his grasp and fell open on the floor. The air thickened until it became almost unbreathable. Jonathan could feel the temperature drop, could taste iron on his tongue, that strange metallic tang that accompanied the nearness of things not meant to be seen. The crucifix above the altar groaned, the wooden beam bending as though burdened by the weight of centuries. His mother gasped softly, clutching her chest, whispering a prayer too broken to understand. From the far end of the chapel, a second voice emerged, faint, overlapping, used like an echo trying to reach through stone. Remember. The word came again and again, layered with other tones, other languages, other lives. It was no longer just one spirit, it was a chorus. Jonathan felt tears rising unbidden as he realized that this was not the haunting of one man, but a gathering of voices demanding to be heard. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the stained glass in fractured blues and golds. The cross above the altar trembled, then split down the middle with a crack that shook the floor. Jonathan fell to his knees. The candles extinguished, yet the room glowed faintly, a light with no visible source, pulsing softly like breath. And in that radiance you spoke one final time. They thought suffering was beauty, but love is the only truth that endures. His voice softened, fading like mist, but the words rooted themselves in Jonathan's heart. The pastor whispered through his tears, "You are heard." The church fell silent, but in that silence, something holy had awakened. The silence that followed was not emptiness. It was a vast, aching pause that seemed to stretch beyond the walls of the chapel, reaching into the very heart of time. Jonathan remained kneeling on the cold stone floor, his breath unsteady, his palms pressed against the earth as if trying to anchor himself in something real. The cross lay broken before him, its wooden arms split but glistening faintly in the flicker of the remaining candle. The air felt lighter now, almost weightless, yet charged with meaning, as if every molecule carried the echo of what had just been spoken. He raised his head slowly, his eyes adjusting to the dim glow. In that fragile stillness he felt a warmth, gentle, unfamiliar, but deeply human, brush against his chest. It was not the chill of the haunting that lingered. It was something tender, almost forgiving. Yu's voice returned, no longer trembling with pain but steady with understanding. "Peace," it said, barely more than a whisper. "Not vengeance. Tell them we were not made to be perfect, only to be true. Tell them that beauty without compassion is cruelty wearing a mask." Jonathan closed his eyes. For the first time in decades, prayer did not feel like an obligation. It was no longer words recited to the heavens but a conversation carried from one soul to another. He realized that faith was not the absence of doubt, but the courage to look into darkness and still believe in light. All his years of ministry had taught him to seek salvation through repentance, but tonight he saw something deeper, that salvation was not a promise of heaven, but the act of listening, of recognizing the sacred in suffering. His mother's sobs had quieted into stillness. She sat with her hands clasped, head bowed, a faint smile softening her face. She whispered something he could barely hear. "He's free." Jonathan turned toward her, and though her eyes glistened with tears, there was peace there, the kind that comes when truth has finally found its way into the open. He looked once more at the shattered cross. Where it had cracked, the candlelight formed a halo along the splintered edges, making it appear as though the break itself was glowing. It struck him then, that brokenness did not always mean destruction. Sometimes it was revelation. Sometimes it was the only way the light could enter. He whispered into the stillness, "If you can still hear me, your story will not fade. Not in this church, not in this life." The warmth intensified, circling him like a quiet embrace. And as the first light of dawn touched the stained glass, the entire chapel seemed to exhale, a slow, soft sigh, neither sorrow nor relief but release. Jonathan understood then that what had happened was not a haunting but a communion. One soul had found peace, and another had rediscovered faith. The cross was broken, but its meaning had never been more whole. When dawn arrived, the chapel seemed untouched. But the recording was real, the voice, the echo, the prayer. What happened that night was not horror. It was release. A story of faith meeting truth, of pain transforming into light. So, as you leave this story behind, remember Menglong's final words. Protect the living, and never let compassion fade. If this story moved you, share it. Not out of fear but out of hope. Let's keep these voices alive, not as tragedy, but as proof that truth always finds its way home. Thank you for watching Update X24H. Your space for stories that heal, inspire, and uncover what lies beyond silence. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, because some stories are meant to awaken us all. Milky Way.